we reluctantly added the cricket back in because Joe Grant, God bless him, who was the character designer, story man, and director of Dumbo, for crying out loud, was at the studio at the time in his 80s. But he I think you're missing the bed without this cricket. And he kept pushing the cricket on us, and we were like, no, we don't. We got enough to worry about with Mushu. And so they forced us to put the cricket in. So the way we found to use the cricket was, and I'm not answering your question at all, but I found.
Oh no, you're perfectly fine.
It's a funny thing. We're like, okay, we'll put the cricket in. What's great about the cricket is he's little and he's cute and he's earnest and he doesn't talk. Mushu can talk to him. Mushu can sound out his ideas with this little guy, so it's someplace for exposition to go to. But also because the cricket's so cute, and it allows Mushu to be even worse, because Mushu was a new kind of sidekick for us in that he had an agenda that wasn't exactly on the up and up. He was using Mulan to get what he wanted, and he was lying the entire time. So he was not a nice, traditional nice character. He's a con man. He's a phony. And the fact that he's got this little dude that's supporting everything he does kind of helps him. It's the sugar that helps the medicine go down, so to speak. So that's why that was how that little pairing came out. Is we were, and of course they're like, well, what is it? It's it's R2 and C3PO. That's the pairing. It's this one talks and chirps. This one hears English and interprets it for the audience. All sorts of fun stuff to be had there. So, but it wasn't. I don't believe it was really Disney.
Hey guys, it's your host Julian. This week I sit down with Disney and DreamWorks animator John Sanford. We talk pretty in depth about Mulan and just how amazing that movie and soundtrack was. Still one of the best soundtracks out there. We also discuss the complexity of working on projects, what we both do to combat anger issues, John's favorite Chris Sanders and Roy Disney stories, as well as Home on the Range, and so much more. Enjoy the show. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the What's in My Head podcast. I'm your host, Julian, today joined by Mr. John Sanford. John, how are you, sir?
I'm good, sir.
Man, I'm so happy to see this. So like I told you before we started, ladies and gentlemen, John Sanford here was a part of the Mulan and so many other Disney projects we'll talk to in just a little bit, but specifically Mulan. And I told you earlier, man, I don't know if it was the weed starting to kick in and it was getting to me, if it's old age and I'm just getting super, super sentimental in my later years, I'll be 33 here in August. That scene, the arrow scene where Mulan figures out how to use the weights to tie around the post to get the arrow and throw it down. Man, at the end of that song got me. So I would love to know how you got on to Mulan and what was that whole road and journey was like.
Let's see. Well, Mulan was only the second movie I ever worked on, which is that's the first thing I got to say. And it was a young crew. That said, when I went on to Mulan, I was going on as, quote, one of the more experienced people, because at that point Disney was making so many movies that the talent was just spread thin. So Chris Sanders was head of story, and then I think Bernie Mattinson was on it. Bernie's still at Disney. He's in his 80s. I think he was on at the time. Floyd Norman was on at the time, and then they had a few other story artists. Chris Williams was on, and he had just graduated the training program around the same time I did, so he was relatively the same level of experience. Dean Deblois was on, but Dean had just come over from Way Out, so this was the first movie Dean had boarded on. So we were all. And then there was, Julius Aguimatang was on as well, but he had also just graduated the training program. So it was it was like 4 or 5 trainees just graduated from being a trainee.
Yeah.
And then Chris Sanders and two vets basically. And we were all in our 20s. We were all young. We all had various different attitude problems. to not to put a too fine a point on it. I was kind of an angry, like yelly young man. Like I'd get really upset and yell in meetings. Dean was super quiet and intense, but he'd state his opinion, and then he'd just argue it very calmly like a lawyer.
That's terrifying, by
And
the way.
yeah. And Dean had this really, he was like this super like at the time. Now he's jovial. If you ever talk to Dean, he's very jovial and he's got a beard. And but at the time he had this really kind of intense kind of look. And Chris Williams he's like this really tall, affable Canadian guy who just kind of, well, what I'm going for is this. And he just does what, he'll listen to what they're telling him, and he'll just go over here and do what he wants.
Yeah.
And then Sanders kind of pulling us together, who was at the time, he was like, I think Chris was actually younger than you are now when he was head of story on Atlantis.
That's so insane.
On Mulan, sorry. Mulan, I'm jumping ahead in my own timeline. So he was a young guy, Sanders was, and he's kind of pulling us together, and we all looked up to him because we loved his art. And I had just, we were just like super inspired by him. I'd come from Hunchback. I was a trainee on Hunchback, and at the time they're starting Hercules. I was getting ready to roll off of Hunchback. They're making Hercules and Mulan. And the one I wanted to work on walk around the halls looking at all the artwork, I wanted to work on Hercules because it looked like Hercules was going to be our only opportunity to make a big crazy superhero movie, because that's what it looked like. It was, Greek gods, and they were already like, Ron Clements was a huge Superman fan, so he was already like kind of cribbing little ideas from Superman the movie. And so I thought, this is good, I want to be on that. And so I expressed an interest in that project, and I got Mulan.
Yeah.
And at the time, Mulan looked like it was just going to be another Prince and Princess thing, only set in China. But the day I got the assignment, I just walked around and was looking at the art, looking at the boards, and I realized it wasn't going that way. It looked like it was going to be something different. So Sanders came by, dropped off the script, and we talked. I went, no, this is actually going to be pretty darn cool. And so he gave me the script on a Friday. I went and read it back. This is the 90s. So there was a coffee house that was a lot like the one from Friends, a block away from where I lived in Valencia, California, called Java and Jazz.
Ooh.
And I got a giant coffee cup that looked probably like this, only it didn't have Peabody and Sherman on it. And I drank coffee all afternoon, and I made loads of notes in the script. I just jumped in with both feet, and I saw it as an opportunity to, like, for that one to be the one I really got my feet wet on. And it was really from the very beginning, it was not an easy movie to make. That's the thing I always have to tell people, is that it was difficult because there was the thing that there were two things that a lot of folks wanted to do. Some people wanted to push a feminist agenda on it, which we didn't want to do. The notes, a lot of notes that people would give us is, why don't you have the dad train her in secret so she can be a super badass warrior woman going into the army? And then we're like, no, where's she go from there? So no, we want her to be kind of, the thing that Sanders hit upon, and we all kind of jumped on with both feet, because I really think I remember it being Chris's idea. He thought it would be interesting if she was just bad at everything. So that's where that came from. And the fact that she's not even good at being a girl, and then she's forced to, and then she takes her dad's place and goes to the army, and so now she's terrible at being a girl. And we went out of our way to make sure that she's not, and yet she's not a tomboy. How is she going to survive in the army? So there's lots of stakes there. So I remember the whole thing about the the arrow, how do you reach the arrow? And I think Sanders came up, it was Sanders that pitched the idea that like he comes out with a big, Shane comes out with a big box, and this is discipline. This is, and so none of them can do it, and she's the one that figures out if you wrap them around, she can use them as leverage and climb up the thing. But yeah, that's where that came from, and the fact that she was the one that figured it out of all those guys, she's the only one that did it, and she used it as a way to and then from there you see, when we do the training and every yes, we know every movie has a training montage. I don't think they were in 1994 or 5 when we were making that. They weren't as ridiculously overdone and overplayed as they are now, but we wanted to show real growth of not just her but everybody around her. Yeah. And so there's a lot, that sequence does a lot of heavy lifting, but for her character, I think that was one of the big touchstones, is just seeing. But we had to, and that was one of the other things, is we had to see her fail. We had to see her be bad at things. Yeah. And it's one of the things that when you're making a female character, well, she can't be bad at things. You're making her look dumb. Mm-hmm. And we're like, no, she's not dumb. She's just clumsy. She can be clumsy and she can be awkward without being stupid. Mm-hmm. And that was a difficult argument with a lot of the folks on the movie. They didn't want to see it. And it's especially hard when it's one of the hard things when you're doing a female character. There's a tendency to want that character to be idealized. It's like, well, you want to be a good example for women. It's like, well, a great example for women is to see this character like be like everyone else and then
excel.
And excel, and by her own merits, not be perfect right out of the box. So that's a long way around to try hopefully answer your question.
Yeah, like I said, the great thing about this podcast and this format and this medium, excuse me, is it's not like we have to come in here and get sound bites. We don't have to clip. I can tell within the first 5 minutes how long this episode can go. Generally, I try to tell everybody it's going to be at least an hour, because I feel like an hour at minimum fleshes out a lot of things. I've had interviews. I mean, my Linda Semensky episode and my David Stephen Cohen, so the head writer, of Courage the Cowardly Dog, are probably my 2 longest episodes. And it's not just recorded time. I was like before and after, like when we do the little pre-interview type of thing, between both of them, they were at 3 to 3.5 hours a pop. I think the recorded time was like 2.5 hours for most of them. The most recent one with Linda Semensky, I think, almost pushes 3 hours. And then like I said, we chat before and we chat after we hit pause and stuff. But I like seeing how stories evolve, how people come in, because there's a name you mentioned, and we'll circle back to Mulan in just a second, but there's a name you mentioned that I don't think gets, 1, enough credit, and 2, gets brought up enough. Chris Sanders.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. Ladies and gentlemen, Chris Sanders is the reason we have Lilo and Stitch. I mean, yeah. I can't remember, was it his idea? What was it? In the Lion King sequence. Shit, I heard it on the Bancroft brothers podcast, so it's not something I went and researched, but I heard it and then I started watching these videos. But he did something like they were having trouble with some scene in Lion King, and they just walked by Chris, or Chris was like, "Hey, can I have this? I can take it." I think it's the was it the scene? Can't Wait to Be King, maybe, I don't know, but there was a pivotal scene in Lion King that some of the animators were having issues with. I'm like, well, we'll just have Chris bring it up, and I heard it on the Bancroft brothers podcast, and for the life of me, I can't recall right now. It'll come back as soon as we hit pause or as soon as we hit stop on this one. I'll remember exactly what I'm trying to talk about. I'm like, fuck, man, you sounded like an idiot babbling. And like I said, this was great about the podcast. We can flesh out ideas. Nothing has to be perfect. Most of the time, we can fix this shit in post, John, is really what I'm getting at. But neither here nor there, man. But yeah, Chris Sanders does not get enough credit. I mean, the man is a genius. I love hearing stories. Whenever I can watch an interview on him, it's phenomenal. But what you said, you guys looked up to Chris. what's crazy is you guys are 20 years old, in your 20s, such a young age. And Chris is a young cat at that time too. I mean, I think that's why Disney, and I don't want to say youth is the key, because you need veterans and you need experience when it comes to anything. But when you've got that young, hungry, and I think that's what a huge deal it was, and why the Disney animation renaissance happened. I mean, you guys brought back animation, classical animation, out of the dark ages. And a lot of people say it was because of the Black Cauldron, but you know, they said that was almost the death nail in animation for Disney, for sure. But when you guys brought it back, I've had so many of you guys on so far, like Aaron Blaze a couple weeks ago. I've had, you know, you, for the life of me, I can't remember the other people, but what I noticed is the age was so young. You guys were so passionate. You guys were so fiery. You guys were ready to go at such a young age. And one thing I kept hearing was, you guys never said no, right? Like, can you do this? Everybody always said yes, right? And you guys generally figured it out later. I hear it so many times, fake it till you make it type of thing. We're going to figure this shit out, right? So long-winded way of saying, hey, John, what's your favorite Chris Sanders story, man? You got one, like whenever you think of Chris Sanders, you got one during the production of Mulan. You got a favorite Chris Sanders story?
Do I have one Chris Sanders story, or do I have so many that we could just fill a podcast talking about Chris
What's
Sanders?
Your favorite Chris Sanders?
The one that's pertinent to Mulan, and it's the one that one of the reasons why I credit him so much is that he's the first guy that, like, first of all, he's incredibly talented and he's incredibly brilliant. But one of the things he'll do is he would continually turn to us. And we were younger, like I was 26 or 27. Chris Williams is the same age I am. Dean Debois is younger than we are. And he's like asking us. And what was interesting is that one night, like there used to be in Valencia, there was a record store that, and if the name comes to me, I'll be able to pull it. There's actually an animation writer that we bought most of our CDs from that used to work there. And it was called Tempo Records. And Sanders and I are both habitual CD buyers, I think, still to this day. And I stopped there after work and I was looking for CDs, and I heard, oh, hey, John. And I look up and he's there and he's got like a stack of CDs. I said, what's going on? And he said, oh, I Shoot to Thrill from AC/DC was in my head. I had to hear it. And then I'm also looking for some music. I'm supposed to board this sequence where Mulan fights the Shan Yu, and I'm trying to figure out. And he and I started just talking ideas, standing in the soundtrack section of Tempo Records. I've got a stack of CDs like this. He's got a stack of CDs like that. And we just start talking through ideas. And the thing he kept saying is, I don't want to, in the script, they have him just falling into a big fire pit. And I don't want to do that. I want to have her face him face to face. And we're just talking through ideas like that. And we kind of just beat it. A lot of the ideas that we talked about just standing there in Tempo Records wound up in there. I said, wouldn't it be great if he reached up through the ceiling and tried to grab her? And that's in there. He decided he wanted to try and blow him up, blow up the Shan Yu, like with the fireworks, and that wound up in the movie. So that's one. The fact that he thought to ask young, untested, talent that nobody else in the studio trusted yet for ideas, and then we'll just listen and talk through them seriously with you. And I think he still does that. I know he's on a movie at DreamWorks, and his crew is really young, and he's constantly like trying to pump them for ideas and get them involved. What was the other one? There's all sorts of them. I'm trying to think of one that would be. He's the first guy I ever met who would actually pull an all-nighter.
Mm-hmm.
You hear people talk about like Oh, I was up till 3 on this. I remember once leaving at 6 or 7 and then coming back the next day, and he was wearing the same clothes he had on from the night before and literally hadn't slept. And because he needed to get this idea, he felt the need to pitch this idea. And I think it was I think it was Mushu's, yeah, it was when Mushu awakened, that whole thing.
I live.
And how, yeah, that whole thing. So he boarded up just a very basic concept board of that. It was like it, and back then we didn't do like now every sequence is like 12,000 drawings and everything's animated. They were beautiful. It was these drawings that were full of all this personality and perfectly rendered drawings. Only the way Chris can draw them. But everything was there, from Mushu being awakened. Mushu is the guy who awakens the ancestors. Mushu's Mushu wants to be the one that, like, it's like, okay, I get it, I'll go. And then they laugh at him. Your misguidance of Cloud Dang Disaster. Yeah, thanks a lot. All of that was there. All of it was in there. And including the bit where he goes to wake up the stone dragon and breaks it up. All of that was there. And that's the reason why he has to go. But he did that in the night. He literally stayed up all night and boarded it. And then the next day and then after he pitched it, like at 9 in the morning, then had to continue a work day. And I remember him coming into my office and, like, I'm drawing and I feel like tapping on my shoulder. I turn around and he goes, I need to give this to you. And he gave me this drawing of this Tyrannosaurus on a skateboard with its mouth wide open. And it says Tyrannosauruses and I can't remember the phrase was 2 words that just like completely incongruous. Tyrannosauruses in love or something like that. He goes, and I said, thanks, man. And because it's this really crazy Chris Sanders drawing. And he turns to walk away. And he's just, I just feel I need to give more. And then he just runs out of it. And he just ran out of the cubicle. He was clearly out of his mind.
Yeah, sleep deprivation. Yeah.
Yeah. And he was, part of it was, I know he was being silly and just trying to see if he could freak people out. But I think part of him was, there was also, I think there was a little bit of sincerity there where he was just like a little out of his head.
Yeah.
Just I feel I need to give more. And then of course there's him running up and down the hall, like screaming in that Stitch voice before it was a Stitch voice, just trying to upset people.
That's so great, man. Thank you for sharing those stories. I really appreciate it. Like I said, we haven't had too much Chris Sanders talk on here. I think you're the first guest, because I've been waiting for a select few to come on here and talk about that. And speaking of that whole scene I told you about, the I'll make a man out of you scene. We're gonna circle back for just a second. Do you know what World of Warcraft is, John? Oh
yeah.
I used to play pretty heavy back when I was still in the military and stuff, especially towards the last couple years I was in. The wife was working overnight. I was working during the day. We had our oldest son at that time. He'd be in bed by like 7 o'clock for some reason. And I wish I could do this as a kid when I was a kid. Looking back on all the times I fought naps, I regret that now. Right. So just don't get sleep as it is. But my oldest son, this little shit, man, he needs like 10 to 12 hours of sleep, or just to get his beauty sleep. And I'm like, dude, I don't know how you can sleep so long. I get 3 hours and I'm fine in air quotes. I get 3-4 hours, and then I'm off to the races. But I think he gets it from my wife, because my wife could sleep quite a bit. Not calling her lazy, so she listens to every other one of these episodes, so don't take that the wrong way.
Right.
But he definitely gets it from her. But so when he would go to sleep and she would go to work, I would just sit there and play. And there's this whole aspect of online gaming that you have to, make friends, to do quests, to do dungeons and do raids and everything like that. And there's a whole reason I'm telling you this, I promise, and I'll get to it in just a second. But I had Mulan on in the background, right? This is before Disney Plus and all the streaming and stuff. So I had my DVD in and I was listening to it. I guess this is 2015-ish, right? I'm in Virginia, and then I'll Make a Man Out of You scene comes on. So I'm singing it as I'm typing to my friends, talking shit, calling people assholes, like, hey, move, dickhead, you're not supposed to be there. And then I'm mic'd up, right? So people are catching the lyrics, right, in the song. They're like, are you listening to Mulan? And I'm like, no, I'm not. Yes, I am listening to Mulan. I'm watching it too. That's why I died. I didn't want to say that because I didn't want anybody to yell. Like, no, we get it, man. It's a good movie. It's a good song. It's everybody was getting amped up from this song, right? So imagine, right? You've got a headset on and people from all over the world, while you're trying to come together as these guys are in the sequence to train and get better and become a unit. We're doing the same thing virtually, right? 15 years after this movie comes out, and we're doing this to World of War. I have a very sad life, John. I'm sorry. We're doing this to World of Warcraft, right? Mm-hmm. So I start thinking all these guys and these girls are singing this shit, right? And I start thinking, I was like, man, I wonder if I can use this as guild recruitment, right? So guild recruitment, you try to go out there and find new people to come in to fill slots for tanks and healers and DPS and everything. So I start taking lines from I'll Make a Man Out of You, right? So I wrote a couple of them down here, and I would turn those into funny catchphrases or funny slogans, like war slogans type of thing, like trying to get guild recruitment or war recruitment. So I used quite a bit of Strength of a Raging Fire and quite a bit of Force of a Great Typhoon. You have no idea how many people joined specifically just so they can say, I joined the guild that was using Disney references. And there's guild chat whenever you're going. So everybody all over the world on your server, right? There's guild chat, there's trade chat and all this stuff. I set, this is before stuff was really going viral. I set that thing on fire. There were people quoting the lines, quoting movies. That's all you could see. And every once in a while, you're like, please, somebody shut the fuck up about Mulan. I want to buy something. I don't want to sit here and look at this stuff. So then they would bash that guy and they'd go back to quoting the movie or quoting the songs and stuff like that.
That's funny.
So you guys had a really big part in me meeting one of my best friends in the world, Hunter Fuller. He's a listener too. Hunter Fuller. Because I got him on the Raging Fire one. He sent me a secret message type of thing, and he gave me the rest of the lyrics for that one. So you guys are responsible not only for making my childhood, but making me a new friend that I've had for almost 10 years now, 8 years, somewhere around there. So thank you for that, man. I appreciate it.
Great. That's good to hear.
Yeah, man. It's weird what Disney or what animation can really do. It brings people together. You guys bond over it, especially family movies like Disney movies. Everybody goes and has a good time. There's something there for men, women, young, old, something there for everybody, man.
Right.
But getting back to you and Mulan, when this is going on and the production is you guys are in the thick of it, right?
Right.
You guys have got two big names as far as the cast. Eddie Murphy being one, and you had a little Peabody and Sherman Cup there, so June Foray being the other one, right? And I was just talking to Dave Wasson on Sunday or Saturday, and he made a show called Time Squad, and there was a direct influence to Peabody and Sherman. We actually talked about it, and then a couple days later, you got a cup. This is Peabody. It's weird how all this shit starts lining up, John. Right? But did you ever get to meet June Foray? Did you ever get to chat with her or talk with her?
I never got to meet June. She I was not privy to most of that. I think the only cast members on Mulan I met Tony brought in Ming Na to meet everybody, and she was really sweet.
I heard she's a really nice lady.
Yeah, she's really nice. And so we met Ming Na, and then I met BD Wong really briefly.
Yeah,
and he's a super cool guy. Didn't get to meet anybody else. Didn't get to meet on that movie that I can remember. Nope, those are the only two.
No, that's perfectly fine. I figured, and I wonder, did he ever get to meet the legend herself? But another big guest from the Blast from the Past on that one was Pat Morita, man. Mr. Miyagi was the emperor there too. So that was really cool. Just going back and looking, that's what's so fun. And Marvel's really instilled that now specifically. I know a lot of people don't watch their credits. They're just waiting for the shit. What's it called? Damn, I can't think of the Marvel trailer.
the credit scenes.
Yeah, the end credit scenes. Thank you.
Yeah.
John, you need to be working in animation or film or something like that, because you got some inside knowledge here with this vocabulary. No, but everybody just sits through it, and then generally once the movie ends, everybody's on their phone until the end credit scene gets. But I like watching and looking at the credits, man. That's why I do this podcast.
Yeah.
We get to talk to the people that made it, because you guys had, like I said, such a huge influence on culture and people and us and them, and it's just crazy seeing all these names pop up, man. But when this movie is in production, what is the hardest part specifically for you? I mean, I'm assuming you're struggling because this is your second movie. You said super young, right? But you guys are super experienced for that age range or that movie, that bracket, because you're coming off your second one. But what was the hardest part, man, for you working on Mulan?
I think that it was just hard to, I felt, first of all, I had a hard time drawing the characters.
Which one was the hardest?
To me, all of them were hard. I was not, I, coming out of school, I wanted to work, I had a super cartoony drawing style at the time, and I wanted to, I wanted to do Warner Brothers cartoons, and I was jealous of my friends. I'd get up on Saturday morning and watch Dexter's Lab and Powerpuff and those Envy, and then see my friends' names on the credits and say, "Dang it, I wish I was there." That was the funny thing. I was working on Mulan. I would have rather have been like at Cartoon Network, hanging out with my old pals from Cal Arts and working on that stuff. Just because I think my drawing style tended to be more cartoony. I was a Warner Brothers guy, so drawing.
Before you get into that, why did you go the Disney route, if you don't mind me asking?
They made an offer to bring me in as a story trainee, and that's what I really wanted to do. You know, whenever I watched Disney stuff, and whenever I looked at the that's the thing, I always liked Disney stuff. And when I do personal things, the interesting thing is when I do personal things, I do tend to like lean into the more emotional, dramatic angle. But I always wanted to do, like, I also love Warner Brothers cartoons. I love doing wild, crazy, funny stuff as well. That said, when my film at Cal Arts, when I put at Cal Arts, my third year, my film was in the producer's show, and Kirk Wise and Gary Trousdale on Hunchback specifically like asked to see my portfolio, so I submitted it, and they hired me to work on Hunchback. That's how I got to there. That's how I got there. And to be perfectly honest, I don't regret that decision at all. That's more, as time went on, that became more the place I needed to be.
Yeah.
But drawing wise, it was super, back then story drawings could be rough. They didn't have to be on model, but I'd look at like Dean Deblock could draw Mulan, and like he almost went into comic books. That's the level his illustration skills are at. He could hang with people like Chris Picciolo and Mike Wieringo. People of that level. He's at that level as an illustrator. Same with Chris Williams. They both draw at that level. Me, I was, I wanted to be Ed Benedict at one point. So I really, really worked hard trying to figure out how to draw that stuff. That was a struggle for me. And then also I had a temper. And so just being, I think I struggled with that a lot too. It was just trying to get, I was always frustrated when it seemed like things weren't going our way, and I just get really upset.
Well, staying on that for just a second, because one thing that I do like exploring, and I apologize for keep cutting you off, but there's something that we can something we can get out of this too. I suffer from the same thing. Like I have very, very, I don't want to say hairpin temper, but I do I lose my shit quite often is what I'm getting at, John. Let's just cut right to the fat and just take all that shit all out. So what are some of the things that you do? Because I know there is a lot of people out there that struggle, me, myself included, with a temper. And it's never, my temper is never, or my anger is never generally directed at anybody. Generally, it's my own shortcomings or my own failings. Because, perfect example, I'm at work, I fuck a dish up, right? And I get pissed off, right? Now, my sous chef, his name is Jose, but everybody calls him Josie. It's just the name we've always called him. So Josie's like, man, calm down, man. It's not that big of a deal. It's like, no, it's not. I wish people could see why I get angry or why my brain works the way it works, right? Because it's not that I'm mad that I'm having to redo it. It's the fact that I let something cloud my judgment, or I let something not click up here and it translates to there, and then I fuck that up. So I'm more mad at myself, or if something's going wrong or something's not, like you said, going the way it needs to go, I'm more mad because I don't have the, I guess not the faculties is not the right word. I don't have the tools that I need to fix that mentally in my head, if this makes any sense at all. It's just like all of this crazy shit is going on that's externally, right? I'm trying to take that and absorb it and try to push it my way so I can break it down. And when I don't get it, I get more mad at myself because I'm not able to problem solve the way I should be. When you just take a step back and look at it, like, man, I could have handled that a little differently. So that's why I get angry more than anything. It's just like, fuck, dude, I really wish I would have handled that a little bit differently. I really wish I had the tools. I've been told that men have when it comes to emotion. We have the 8-box crayon set. I had a psychology teacher in college. He's like, women, they have the 16 colors of crayons, and they have the pencil sharpener back there. So they have all of these wider range of emotions. He's like, men, we hungry, men mad, men sad. But men mad and sad, because he started talking like we're a fucking caveman. He's like, men mad and sad. He was like, that's generally it. We don't even have those 6 colors. We've got like 3, and that's all we really get. We don't have the tools to really work with this. So I like using that analogy, man. But whenever something like this, we've talked about it when I had Tony Sampson on, when it came to depression and suicide. I've never really had anybody that's on that's because anger is one of those things that a lot of people, I don't want to say I know I get embarrassed when I get super hot and super angry, because I just look at them like, fuck, I could have handled that so much better, but I got to let my emotions get the best of me. But you specifically, what are some of the things that you would notice as far as temper goes? And what are some of the things you notice now that you can kind of, all right, man, I need to recenter. I need to zen myself. I need to pull myself out of the situation. So what are some of the things you do?
Well, the thing that one of the reasons why anger was a problem for me is I've been more open about it. I have ADHD.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the components of ADHD is a hair trigger temper, because we don't process, because of the manner in which we process information. Emotions tend to bottle up, or you're feeling so many things at once, and you're getting so much of your brain is processing things so fast that your emotions back up on you, and the only way it comes out is
yeah.
It's just anger just comes out. So either a lot of times I'd either feel numb, or I'd feel really mad about something, or really sad about something. And anger is the one that is kind of the go-to for mine. And so if I'd get frustrated, I'd get mad about it. If I was upset about something, it would come out as anger. If I was being impatient because somebody wasn't seeing an idea, or somebody was ignoring an idea, or somebody was not doing something the way I thought it should go, or things weren't going, it would just bottle up. And some of it's just natural passion.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that helped me kind of corral it all at the ripe old age of 54 is you've got to
I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh, but that that one got me, John. I appreciate that one.
Yeah, because I'm an older guy. But the thing that it's figuring out that other person, it's figuring out the alternative narrative. If an executive is making a decision, they're not making that decision to make the movie bad. they're making that decision because they're seeing things that you can't see.
Yeah.
Many times. They're dealing, they've also got, they're trying their best to make the best movie that they can as well.
Yeah.
They're all trying to help, but they might have other experiences. Like there was a woman who was really upset by an early version of the way we played Mulan's reveal. And it just made her really upset and made her really uncomfortable. And rather than like, oh, she doesn't know what she's talking about, Sanders went and talked to her and sought out why that was. And it altered the way we portrayed it, ultimately. But people aren't generally, the thing that I've learned to understand is nobody's trying to mess you up.
Yeah.
They're all doing their own thing. And so you kind of like, if somebody cuts you off in traffic, they're not trying to mess with you. They're just trying to get where they're going. Maybe they're in a hurry.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, well, sorry, that type. And you tend to when you start to like try and seek those narratives, seek the other side of those narratives, rather than like, oh, that guy's an idiot. That guy's trying to run me. You'll find that you will not get angry at 80% of the things, 80 to 90, sometimes 99% of the things that you used to get mad about. And what's interesting is that now I kind of want to spend the rest of my life like going around, sorry I was such a jerk. Sorry I was,
You're doing what Chris was doing. I wish I was more giving.
It's funny because I now want to go around. There's loads of people who, I don't know how many people listen to this. There's like, I one day want to sit down with Tony Bancroft and say, I'm really sorry I was such a hothead on Milan. I want to sit down with Barry Cook and say, I'm really sorry I was such a hothead on Milan. I know I was a handful. Things like that. Things like that. And what's interesting is that now, nowadays when I'm on my current show and I'm dealing with younger artists, these guys fortunately are not young. They're young, but they're not angry. They're just trying to do the best job they can. And so I'm a lot more, if they're having trouble with something, I'm a lot more patient with them. Yeah. I'm like, he'll get it. He's just, maybe this, if he forgot this one thing, it's because this, maybe his kids were sick or something.
Yeah.
I try, those are the types of things I try and do. And then I also try to, like, if I'm frustrated about something, I try and identify what's frustrating me. Why am I frustrated? Are you, and when you start to like sit down and really
check in with yourself,
go deep and check in, you'll find that a lot of the times you won't be mad.
Yeah.
And if it's about it, and if it's at somebody else, you'll find that you're like, I'm not mad at them anymore. Yeah. I'm not mad at this guy. And it's just kind of, it's changed a lot of the way. I used to do a comic strip, a web comic called Chippy and Lupus that was about a super angry, aggressive rabbit and a really dumb dog wolf character. I find it's harder to write that comic strip because I no longer identify with a rabbit. I used to be able to channel the rabbit all the time. And lately I can't. I'm like, I'm not that, I can step outside it and write that character the way a writer might write the Hulk, but I can no longer jump in that character's head and be that character.
Yeah. That's a good thing though, John. I mean, there's a lot of people that chase I wear a chef coat, not a lab coat or a fucking doctor's coat. So ladies and gentlemen, take whatever I'm about to say with a grain of salt. You see what I did there, John? That's a cooking joke. Grain of
I know. That's pretty good.
My kid would have called me a loser if he would have heard me say that shit. But it sounds like you found peace though, man, is what it sounds like. It sounds like you found whatever's making you tick. It's so hard because it's so easy to sit there and say the reason I'm mad is because of them. The reason I'm mad is because of her. Reason I'm mad is
Right.
because of that, this, or that. Very few people can sit there and say, man, I'm the one that's fucked up in this situation. I'm the one. I look back on it so many times. You ever seen the movie Happy Gilmore?
Oh yeah.
So that scene at the beginning of the movie where he's always saying, he was like, man, I was a really angry kid, and it's him hitting the kid in the head with a hammer. And he's like, but I'd always be really, really quick to apologize when I was wrong. And he's at the next 2-second scene, it's him bringing that same kid he was hitting in the head with the fake hammer, a piece of cake, and, apologizing and rubbing the kid's back. That's what I do. Because as soon as I do something where my anger gets the best of me, I'm like, fuck. Shouldn't have said that, shouldn't have done that. That was stupid. I didn't mean that. I just wanted to say whatever was right there to come out here so everybody else could fucking feel whatever pain I was feeling, right? Because the things that cut the worst are generally what's pretty much true, 90% true, at least. That's generally what really cuts the deepest. So but with you specifically, man, it sounds like you kind of found peace, man. It sounds, I don't know you, this is the first time we've actually talked face to face type of thing. We've talked in messenger and shit like that before, but man, it sounds like you're on the right path, at least, and you're better and happier than you are now. And I'm pretty sure, do you know how old Tony is compared to you and how old Barry is?
Tony's my exact same age, and it's one of
Okay.
the reasons why I have a lot of sympathy and empathy for Tony, because I can't imagine being the age I was, because if Tony, like I was 26, 27 on Mulan, Tony was 26, 27 on Mulan directing.
Mm-hmm.
And to be thrown into that position and then have, because what was interesting is I'm going to jump all over the place. When I was given, given the position of director on
Home of the Range.
That's the one. Yes, thank you. That's the movie. You'll find that like for its age, I'm 54, and B, the older I get, ADHD also makes things like very normal, elusive, common words just fly, and you don't know where and it'll take me an hour to go. I'll go, and that I literally could have sat here for 15 minutes and not been able to pull that title if you hadn't told me. That said, I can't imagine being that old, and getting that and being dropped into that position and being given that position. Do you want to direct this movie? Well, yeah. But when I was asked to take over Home on the Range, I was 32.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd been at Disney, I'd been there 5 or 6. I'd been there 6 or 7 years. I'd done story on 2 movies and then was head of story on Atlantis. So I'd had some movies under my belt, but then they're like, hey, want to direct this one? And what was interesting is that even at that age, there were like several people like, why the heck are you directing?
Yeah.
Who are you? Who is this? Who is this Claude? Why do I suddenly have to listen to this kid tell me how to do my job? So I can't imagine. I can say I can't imagine, but then I also can. And I also witnessed a lot of the crap that Tony took on that movie, because I was also one of the idiots that was giving it to him, and it wasn't right. Tony was doing the best he could. And the great thing about Tony was that he also was very honest when he, unlike a lot of people, and I've seen a lot of people take that job and then act like they had all the answers.
Mm-hmm.
Tony never did that. Tony was like, well, what would you, he's like, help us. What would you do? He was earnest in that he wasn't throwing his weight around, and he was trying to do a good job. And he also, when he didn't know something, he'd admit it, and he'd defer to Chris, or he'd defer to Barry. But I think he did a great job. And his first movie out of the gate is Milan. He got to direct.
And Mushu too.
Yeah.
Huge. When was the last time you got a chance to talk to Tony?
At the Mulan 21st anniversary thing at CTN. We all got to sit up on a stage in fancy chairs like this one.
Yeah.
And and Jerry Beck asked
Oh,
questions.
he's such a great dude
Yeah,
too.
for of us in front of an audience. And yeah, I got to see both him and Tom and Barry. I got to see Barry again. Barry's a trip. Barry's a good guy.
Yeah.
Still doesn't look his age. Um, and it was good to see everybody.
Have you gotten to tell Tony this?
No, I've never got to sit down with Tony and say, hey, because back it was before I'd gone. You know, I've been in therapy for the last year and a half, thanks to the pandemic. And a lot of the stuff I've just kind of discovered through therapy and through talking. And yeah, I'd love to sit down with. There's a bunch of people I'd love to sit down and talk to and just give them props. And Tony's one of them. Tony's a great guy.
Well, I've actually been talking to both Tom and Tony. I'm hoping they'll come on sometime in June. They said they're real busy right now. Both of them said they were interested. Well, Tony definitely said he was interested, and I've been talking to Tom here and there. But like I said, they're both busy guys. One second. One thing that I did notice, though, through the pandemic, you just said you were doing therapy through the pandemic. It forced a lot of people to really reshuffle the deck of life, right? Mm-hmm. I know I did. I told you before why I started the podcast, all of that crazy shit happening. And then I noticed that there wasn't time, right? Kobe Bryant dies at 41 years old. His daughter at 12 or 14, 12, I think. Can't remember. Very young is what I'm getting at, right? Whole life in front of her. He was still living on, he was not even half of his life, man. Legends, people shouldn't die at 41. People shouldn't die at 12. People shouldn't die as infants or before. Life is supposed to be long, right? For me, I want to see, I'm hoping I'll mean 100 years, right? If we can ever be so lucky to have the thinking that you have right now. So all the shit, right, from your past that you were going through, all of this stuff that you've been forced through isolation, through being at home, through just, like I said, COVID completely shuffled the deck, man. I've only said it once, like I said, with the Jorge episode. I talk about, that was the first time, that was literally 2 days after my father-in-law passes away. It was so fucking difficult, right? Because somebody's there and then they're not, right? We always think we have more time than we actually do, right? It's life like that. It's all it takes. The fucking blink of an eye and life is gone. That one person is no longer here. So ladies and gentlemen, if you have anything that you want to say to somebody, say it now. Don't wait, because tomorrow's never promised. The next second's never promised. You never know when your time to go is. So if you learn anything from this podcast, man, really say whatever it is, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. At least you know when they know where you stand, man. And I got to imagine listening to the Bancroft. I don't know why I keep fucking up their name, right? The Bancroft brothers. Bancroft. It's like one of those tongue twisters, right? The Bancroft. The BC brothers is one of the coolest podcasts that I've heard just on animation. It's phenomenal, right? Listening to how not only you, because from a fan's perspective, as far as how movies are made, especially me, I'm a very dumb fan. I see something, pretty colors. Oh, the voice acting is great. All this animation, this walk sequence, this is so cool. This shot is just so fucking cool, right? But seeing how you guys and gals look at something and then interpret that and then make it your own, whether it's for the visualization, the art direction, the writing, the stories, the animation, the this, the that. I love seeing how you guys take something like a story about a pen, but you add character and depth to this pen, right? So it's a weird way of saying what you guys do, I guess, is a real weird example, I guess. But it's crazy to see how you guys do it. But listening to them talk, man, and listening to you talk on how you see a movie or how you see a character on, when we were talking earlier on Milan, you didn't want to make her seem like she was good at being a guy because she wasn't very good at being a girl at that point in time, or what people thought a girl should be during that time frame. You put me in that position at 26 years old, man, that Mulan movie is going to suck, because I would just, like, I don't know, make them fight, make the dragon say some funny stuff. You know what I mean? So it's just interesting to see it at such a young age, what you guys and gals come up with, man. You guys are phenomenal. for 26 being on your second movie, dude. You guys absolutely crushed that movie. It was a beautiful movie, man. So hats off to you. And like I said, thank you for getting, like I said, try not to get super personal with you guys, but when something like that, depression, suicide, anger, you know, some of the stuff that life throws at us comes up, I don't want to cut the water off too soon, because there's so many people that listen to this. I have so many fans that are on the autism spectrum, that have Down syndrome. So many fans that are in the industry, from writers to some of the executives that I've had on, love my show when they tell me like, oh man, I'm so happy you got this person. I love this person. And hearing some, like Linda Semensky told me, she's like, I've known some of these people you've had on here 30 plus years, and I haven't heard the stories that I've heard them say. And she's like, I work with them every day and I have not heard these stories. You talk to them for 20 minutes and it's like they're sitting on a couch with you, like you're conducting somebody's somebody's therapy session. So she's like, it's crazy to see what you get out of some of these people. So whenever something like that comes up where it's like real life shit, I really like to explore it, because people get a lot of information from this podcast, whether it's tips and tricks, whether it's how they should handle something, or it's how they look at something. So it's always nice to see when real life shit happens. And I keep hitting this thing, I apologize. Real life shit happens and we can explore it and we can talk about it, even though this is an animation pop culture podcast. It's life really at the end of the day, John. So thank you for getting personal with us. I really appreciate it.
No problem at all.
Thank you. And you know, I know we've hit about that hour mark. How are you looking on time? Are you okay? I don't want to put you in a negative light, but
I know we can probably go for another 20. My wife, my lovely wife, wants to go to dinner, and then we're going to go we've discovered the love of ice skating.
Yeah.
And just started ice skate. We go to either Pickwick over here in Burbank, or there's a place we drive all the way to Valencia and we skate. I've got a pair. We just skate around, or we've just, and it feels like elementary school, but there's a roller rink and we roller skate at the same time. And I tell you, man, for someone in my age bracket, there's no better exercise than skating around a rink for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. I never was in the military, so I don't know what that feels like, but
miserable.
Yeah, that's what I figure. I've got a history of heart disease in my family, so I read that skating's good for your core. It's good for it's believe it or not, an all body exercise. And it's not, I've done the thing where I've lifted, I've gone to the gym and lifted, and I did one workout where I got to the point where I could squat 360.
Wow, that's good.
And I can't do that anymore, but it's so boring. It's so boring. But if you're like skating with me and my wife just skate around to dumb disco songs, and it's like, man, it's like 1978 all over again.
Tell me you're wearing bell bottoms. Are you bringing out the John Travolta? I couldn't think of his name.
No. I was not a bell bottoms guy, but we do, like, what's funny is we do it. There's one of these days I'm either going to make a documentary or a comic book about the culture that happens within a skating rink, because characters appear. There's like, and what I've noticed is that Sarah's like, my wife Sarah goes, it's like a party. It's like going to a party. So like, she'll dress up and she'll put on an outfit for skating, and I'm like, you're wearing that? You're wearing, okay, I'll go to my closet and find something that coordinates with her so that people know we're together.
That's cool.
And it's silly and crazy, but yeah, that's what we're probably going to do tonight, is either go to the ice skating rink or we're going to go to the roller rink again.
That's cool, man. That's what makes marriages last. I've been married this year. I got to do the count, because I was about to say it's 14, but no, we've been together 15. We've been married for 13 this year.
Hey, that's great. And congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate it. In 2 weeks, we'll be married for 13 years. Greatest person. Like, I wouldn't want to be with anybody else, man. She's so fun. I'm pretty sure on the other side, I know I drive her up the fucking wall, because that's the whole reason I started this podcast. She's like, will you stop talking about cartoons? You literally have a podcast. Talk to the people about cartoons. I'm so tired of hearing about this actor doing this, or this voice, or this animator doing this. And I was like, okay, And then she brings up Grey's Anatomy. I'm like, will you start a podcast about something? I don't want to hear Grey's Anatomy. It never really works in my favor when I try to flip it back around on her because she's way too smart for that. She's way too smart than me. But that's what keeps the marriage good, man. You guys do stuff together and you do stuff that's fun, man. So I love hearing that type of shit. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're looking for something to do, John's a big proponent on ice skating and roller skating, man. It really keeps shit fresh and it keeps stuff fun. Good workout too. So as we start to wind down here, man, we got some fans questions. Did you have fun, by the way? I know we talked a little bit crazy. I don't know what you're expecting when you're coming on here. I never know what I'm going to expect and what we're going to get and what we're going to talk about.
This is a fun talk. I feel like we should do I'd be open to doing a part 2 just so we can get to do nitty gritty on some of the other movies. But
I would love to do a part 2
about my mental nonsense for a good 20 minutes. So yeah, anytime you want to do more, I'm open and willing and talk about comics, talk about whatever.
Beautiful. So, I'd love to do that for a part 2. So what we'll do is I'll reach back out and see what your schedule is in a June, July-ish time frame, and we'll do another part 2, man. Because I've had a lot of fun. Like I said, we've explored some really, really cool shit. And we can redo some stuff. So whenever I do these things, I never write stuff down. And I told you this is the first time I've actually written stuff down. So when I was looking up Mulan, and I don't know if you'll be able to answer this, but you worked on the movie, so you might be able to. I saw something that was like one of those rumor type of things on IMDb. Apparently, Mushu was hinted towards, like they wanted to see something like a Mushu by Roy Disney. Is there any weight to that? Did Roy Disney say, "Hey, man, I'd like to see something like Mushu in this"?
No.
No.
Not to put too fine a point on it. When you make these movies, there's always going to be, like back then when you develop something like this, you look for and maybe Tony will put no, of course, that's he's completely wrong about this, but I know that you look for the animated elements. So if you've got human characters in your movies, the first thing they do is like, can we animate those little food dogs? You know,
Yeah.
can you animate? So initially, the first thing they had in Mulan, the first sidekicks in Mulan, there was a dragon and a phoenix, and they argued all the time. They talked to each other, and so Mulan. It was 2 characters that went with Mulan, because in other movies there was like in Little Mermaid you got Flounder and Sebastian. In Beauty and the Beast, you got like 4 or 5 of those little critters. You know, you got the teapot, you got
Cogsworth, and I can't remember
Cogsworth in the air. You even got the feather duster. So it seemed, you know, that it was natural to just populate your movie with these little sidekicks. The big problem with the dragon and the phoenix characters is that Mulan would wind up just sitting and watching them argue.
Yeah,
they'd start going at each other, and when you took one of them out, it was a thing between Mulan and Mushu. And then we reluctantly added the cricket back in because Joe Grant, God bless him, who was the character designer, story man, and director of Dumbo, for crying out loud, was at the studio at the time in his 80s, but he would, I think you're missing the bed without this cricket. He kept pushing the cricket on us, and we were like, no, we don't think cricket. We got enough to worry about with Mushu. And so they forced us to put the cricket in. So the way we found to use the cricket was, and I'm not answering your question at all, but I found,
oh no, you're perfectly fine.
It's a funny thing. We're like, okay, we'll put the cricket in. What's great about the cricket is he's little and he's cute and he's earnest. And he doesn't talk. Mushu can talk to him. Mushu can sound out his ideas with this little guy. So it's someplace for exposition to go to. But also because the cricket's so cute, and it allows Mushu to be even worse, because Mushu was a new kind of sidekick for us in that he had an agenda that wasn't exactly on the up and up. He was using Mulan to get what he wanted, and he was lying the entire time. So he was not a nice, traditional nice character. He's a con man. He's a phony. And the fact that like he's got this little dude that's like supporting everything he does kind of helps him. It's the sugar that helps the medicine go down, so to speak. So that's why we like that was how that little pairing came out is we were, you know, and of course there's like, they're like, well, what is it? And it's like, it's R2 and C3PO. That's the pairing. It's like, this one talks and chirps. This one hears English and interprets it for the audience. All sorts of fun stuff to be had there. So, but it wasn't, I don't believe it was Roy Disney that said, hey, you need a sidekick. That's my bad Roy Disney impression.
That's the first one we've had over here.
I used to do a better one. I used to be able, I just don't like hearing the word but. You know, I used to be able to, just because I used to hear, he was so much fun to sit and talk, and then Steve Anderson did an impression of Roy, and then I developed one. Because it was, you know, it's fun to, I'm from Denver, Colorado, and so you hear, he's from, Roy being from Kansas, you hear that accent all the time, and I'm like, I know that accent. I know people who talk like that, and then you kind of add that smoker's voice, and you kind of, I don't want to see any of that in our movies, you know, that kind of, you kind of just, and then you just slow it down. Plus he was so, I loved Roy and I loved Alice. They were such nice people. They're like your grandparents, and they were really sweet.
Tom said Roy was his favorite billionaire. Tom Cito.
Yeah, I would agree. Roy was a sweet guy. You know, I never met anybody. And part of it, that's the interesting thing is I think he grew up while all of that was kind of growing up around him. So he wasn't born with like $1 billion in the bank. He was born, I think he was born with a dad just tearing his hair out because his crazy brother was constantly trying to make the company go broke with his wild ideas. I think that was the reality he grew up with. It's just, your crazy uncle's gonna sink us with these dumb ideas. He wants to build a theme park. Can you believe this? And now we have to buy all these orange groves and build a theme park.
And now it's the most recognizable character in the world, next to Batman, Superman, and Coca-Cola.
Exactly. So I think that's one of the reasons why he was so affable, is he didn't grow up with that money in the bank. He grew up while that money was
growing.
While the bank was while the money was growing, but somebody kept spending it at the same time.
100%, man. We got a couple more minutes here. Can you do me a favor the next time you come on? Can you work on your Roy Disney accent? I'd love to. I'm going to go watch some Roy Disney interviews, and I want to hear John Sanford if he's got some time to practice. Figure a couple weeks might get it.
I used to do it all the time, but there was one I did where, and I'll do it next time. I'll just describe the set. We were at we were doing a screening in a Home on the Range in, I think it was Laverne, California. We were at a mall, and Bed Bath and Beyond was there, and so we're outside talking to Roy and Patty, and Patty goes, "Oh, Roy, they've got glass. I want to go see if they've got some glasses I want to get." Okay, you go ahead. And it was hilarious to watch, like, Patty come out, and her and Roy kind of bicker for a second on as to whether or not they should buy these glasses at Bed Bath and Beyond, and Roy describing why they needed the glasses because the kids kept breaking them and stuff like that. And so I used to do a little bit for people that they thought was hilarious. Just Roy like telling, because I think we should get them, and he's like, I'm not gonna do it. But it was cute. Yeah, so cute. But these two people, like, Roy had a Ferrari and has yachts, and yet, because Bed Bath and Beyond has a sale on a case of glasses that Patty thinks is cute, she wants to go get them. And it's just like, there's nothing more relatable than that. It's the fact that, like, and then he doesn't want to go get them because he'd have to carry them through the mall to this. He's got a screening. So that's what I love. That's the thing that's the story that always comes to mind when people ask me what it was like. It's like, he's like your grandparents.
Yeah.
And who has $1 billion but doesn't remember he has $1 billion.
Yeah. Man, what a problem to have. You know what I mean? I've heard nothing but great stories about Roy. 2 questions, and then we'll wrap it up. The first one, I pre-gamed you a little bit. If you had a Mount Rushmore +1, who's on your Mount Rushmore of animators when it comes to influence for you in your career?
I have to include cartoonists
Okay.
in with this. Charles Schultz was the reason I wanted to be a cartoonist. So he's one. Walt Kelly, who you may not know, you might have to Google. He did a comic strip called Pogo.
Mhm.
When you see Walt Kelly's drawings, you'll know and then you look at my drawings online, you'll go, oh, that's who he's ripping off, and badly. Walt Kelly made me want to draw and made me want to work at Disney because Walt Kelly was a cartoonist. He did a comic strip called Pogo, but before all that, he was an animator at Disney.
Mhm.
And he worked on Dumbo and he worked on a bunch of different things. So it's Walt Kelly, Charles Schultz, and then I always have to. It gets a little more difficult, but Chuck Jones Chuck Jones is there because Chuck Jones was his cartoons, his Warner Brothers cartoons specifically, were the first cartoons I remember seeing the name Charles M. Jones and then going, oh my God, that was an amazing cartoon.
Mhm.
And just those are the cartoons I reference in my head because they were not only hilarious, but Chuck also went for nuanced emotions that not all the other guys did. Like Clampett stuff was great, but Chuck will go for pathos and real like just that scene of the bulldog crying because he thinks that the kitty's been ground up and made into cookies and
Yeah.
feed the kitty. Nobody did a scene like, none of those other guys ever attempted anything like that and made it sweet and also funny. So Chuck is there, so that's 3.
Mhm.
And the fourth one gets a little difficult, and the one that's jumping into my brain, and it's going to take a while to I'll explain it as briefly as I can, but Edward Van Halen is my number 4, because and I play guitar a little bit, and I've struggled with guitar all my life, but I remember being a teenager and seeing the Jump video, and I didn't know cable came to Denver very late, so I didn't see a lot of Van Halen. All I knew about Van Halen was I think a friend of mine had the Diver Down cassette, and he played a little bit of it for us, and I thought that's pretty good, that's pretty awesome. But then I saw the Jump video, and it's kind of this crazy video, and David Lee Roth's up in the camera. I'm like, that guy's pretty wild. And then the guitar play, they cut to him, and Eddie just goes, just 1 second, and then just lays out this blistering solo. And the entire time, what I was used to seeing when I'd watch guitar players is guys pulling faces and seem to struggle with it, and Eddie's just
Having a good time.
is this fun? I'm having fun. I'm having fun playing this. Do you like what I'm doing? I don't care. I'm having fun anyway. That kind of affable attitude that he had playing, and just a sense of fun. And once I started listening to the music, and once I started trying to analyzing the songs and trying to play them, first of all, he's one of the best rhythm players in the history of rock and roll. You can put him up next to Pete Townsend and all these others. Just rhythm and writing unique riffs, and song structure. There's almost no one better. I'd put him up with Lennon and McCartney as far as great song structure, and memorable song structure. You can hum his riffs. You can't do that with a lot of rock players. So there's that. It's also the melodic quality of what he does, in his solos and in his playing, but also just you'll never hear, especially if you take out that second album, and they're a hard rocking band, and yet they've got a song like "Dance the Night Away." That can that's not. It's a beautiful song, and the influences that made that song what it is. It's him just bringing all this stuff in, and just kind of letting it pass through. It's the when I listen to the music, when I hear him talk about guitar playing, and when I hear him talk about why he likes things a certain way, it's a mode of thinking I've tried to apply to drawing, and I've tried to apply to writing, and I've tried to apply to like how I approach editing scenes and movie making. It's about like, it's stripping away what's not there, and yet also adding things in that aren't expected, and doing things that aren't necessarily going to be the expected way, but that are meaningful. There's I think there's a lot to be learned in just finding. I've been one to like look for things that inspire you to do art. It can come from anywhere. If you're a cartoonist, you don't necessarily have to just take inspiration from cartoons, although I have. I think it's interesting to look at other things and look at other mediums. Like my friend Rad Seacrest, who was the creator of Kipo and the Wonder Beasts on Netflix, was talking about how his approach to character design was influenced by Stevie Williams, the skateboarder, how Stevie Williams skateboards.
Yeah.
And I went, that's amazing. I'm totally down with that. And I was just thinking, that's kind of, because I've always had that approach with thinking about how Van Halen, how he approached a song, how he approached recording a song, how he does things. And so those are my four. If I had to add a fifth, I'd say Harvey Kurtzman.
Yeah.
He's the honorable mention. Not just for creating Mad, but he's got a couple of, if you seek out, there's Kitchen Sink Comics did a collection of his Hey Look comics that were just one pagers he would do in the back of these humor cartoons, humor magazines, or funny animal comics. And they're brilliant. Textbook cartooning. They're so good. And it's like this little slim volume. And if you go on eBay, those things sell for like $400 or $500 now.
Yeah.
They need to reprint that book. But the other one is his Jungle Book, which was this weird little paperback he did for Ballantine Books in the 50s or 60s. And it's 4 or 5 little stories that were little riffs on little ideas he had, but it's just brilliant. They're just brilliant, fun comics, and super big influence on me and how I think.
Beautiful. And last question, you just talked books, and you brought up one I'm pretty sure you put on there. If you had 2 books to tell every animator to go and pick up, what are those 2 books?
I'm gonna have to, and it's right here next to my.
I'm so glad you brought this one up. It's such
it's right there.
Book.
Yeah, that one. When I got that book when I was 14 or 15, the local mall, one of the local malls in Denver, University Hills Mall, there was a fire, and the bookstore didn't catch fire, but the fire department had to go through the bookstore to get to the fire. So they stomped on a bunch of books, and the smoke went through the books and made the books all smell like smoke. So the bookstore had to sell all their books at half price and 30% off. So I got The Illusion of Life, and this is a new copy, but my copy,
that's the copy.
My original copy is still over there on that shelf, and it still smells like smoke.
That's awesome.
It still smells like smoke, and it's still in it, and the binding is broken because the fireman just stomped on it. Way into the,
is the footprint still there?
Pardon?
Is the footprint still there?
No, it had a dust jacket that was torn, and that's how I figured that's how it got torn. Is it looked like somebody had stepped on it.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's one book. It's hard to come up with another one. But another book. What is the other book every animation person should read? Um,
You want to save it for the part 2? We'll end it on a cliffhanger.
Yeah, I'll save it for the part 2. I like comics, so the Smithsonian Book of comic strip comics. Okay. It's a big collection of just comics from going all the way back to the early part of the 20th century, and that's where I first was able to read Seagar's Popeye, because they had a full adventure of Popeye in that book. They had a full Dick Tracy adventure in there. They had in serialized in strips. It's the first time I saw Crazy Cat in a significant way, and they had an entire Floyd Gottfredson's Mickey adventure, and it was the first time I'd seen the Mickey comic strip and read it and went, wow, this is amazing. This is so good. The storytelling is so good. The cartooning is so good. So those are my 2 books. I can't tell you that that everybody should have those, but those are the books that I I draw inspiration from and drew inspiration from back then.
That's beautiful. That's a beautiful way to end this too, man. He's been John. I've been Julian. This has been the What's in My Head podcast, and this has been another piece of your childhood. Good night.
Great. Good night.
I just, taking what Brad had in mind, he was just saying, well, it's like 50s, 60s, it's, the superhero thing. And yeah, the fact that, they've all had to go underground and this, he kind of had the basic idea figured out, but there was no script yet. So like we spent almost a year doing stuff, and then of course as we got going, we accrued more people, and from Pixar, and got to keep going. But as I say, for the first year or so, I mean, we were just kind of like pumping out ideas. Really, it was all pre-production, pre-production, then moving into, let's say, well, what would you say, maybe concept art, blue sky stuff, moving into pre-production and moving into production. Yeah, and so I was there for most of it. So I ended up not being with the show for about the last year, but I did a ton of work on that.